Mr. Trudeau, welcome.
Thank you.
So here we are in September of 2021. The housing crisis is a major issue today, just as it was in 2015 when you were first elected. What puts you in a position now to take the bold steps that are in your ambitious plan, currently in your election platform, that you couldn't take over the last 6 years?
Well, part of the baseline that we've built in terms of the National Housing Strategy in 2017 has moved forward on lowering chronic homelessness, on making sure there's more creation of housing, but we have more to do.
With respect, we've had many opportunities for you to list what you have done. What puts you in a position to take these bold steps that you're promising to take now? With concerns around campaign promises being painted as optimistic, what can you assure those who are losing hope of the dream of home ownership with, that this won't become another one of your broken promises?
Well, what we've done in the past is a proof point of our ability to deliver, and what we're going to be delivering now is tens of thousands of dollars for young families to be able to put a down payment on, working with municipalities to the tune of $4 billion to be able to create and refurbish and build more housing, and also a home buyer's bill of rights to protect people from things like blind bidding and predatory practices and foreign investors.
Okay, we know the plan, but again, the question is how. I will move on, though, to the topic of reconciliation. Here we are in the final leg of the election, and you have yet to visit a First Nations community on this campaign. When will you visit Kamloops to meet with the chief of Tecumloops-Teshwetmik and her community, as you failed to make reconciliation a key priority during this campaign?
Actually, throughout this campaign, we've been talking about the path of reconciliation, and one of the very things that we did that was emblematic not just of the challenge of reconciliation in these unmarked graves, but the path forward was go to Cowessess, which was the other place than Kamloops where these graves were discovered. And not only did we cry together and grieve the loss of these kids, but we signed a historic agreement to make sure the kids don't get removed from care, that they stay in their communities. Those kinds of tangible things that actually make it better for kids are the things that we continue to focus on.
Again, Mr. Trudeau, when will you go to Kamloops?
I will go to Kamloops as soon as as it is right and possible for me to go there.
Okay, it's arguably it's been right and possible for you to have gone up until this point.
Conversations with the chiefs and with the discussions of when it is right for the community to be there, when it is right for me to be there to support, when we have things to announce on the path forward that are ready to go from the community's perspective, I will be there, as I have been across the country in communities.
From what I've heard, that community is ready to welcome you and have truth-telling discussions. On that note, I did speak to Tecumloops-Teshwetmik Chief Roseanne Casimir this weekend, and she calls your government's pace of change meaningfully when it comes to reconciliation glacial, and the amount that you have prioritized reconciliation so far in this campaign, contrary to what you just said, completely disappointing. What do you say to her and other Indigenous people across this country that feel the same way?
I agree with the impatience that people feel. I agree with the impatience that Indigenous people feel, because I feel it too. We need to be moving as fast as possible, but it's not just for the federal government to decide we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We have to work with the communities. That's why, for example, this week we're lifting 7 more long-term boil water advisories in Shoal Lake, where I visited in 2015 or 2016 when I first got elected, made a commitment around a road and a new plant, and we're delivering that this week. It took 5 years. It took 6 years. These are things that take long to get them right, but we keep working on them in partnership at the pace dictated by Indigenous peoples.
Mr. Trudeau, did you just call the chief of Tecumloops-Teshwetmik impatient?
I'm impatient, she's impatient, Indigenous people are, yes, eager to see more change happen. If she's calling the pace of change glacial, as she did, she's recognizing that it should go faster, absolutely.
Okay, I'd like to move on to racism. Considering all that's happened in 2020 and 2021 around racism, systemic discrimination, and race in general, Quebec's law against religious freedoms, Bill 21, is one that you on Friday said is not discriminatory. Can you explain why that is?
It's one that I disagree with. I've been very clear over the past many years that I disagree with this bill. I don't think it's up for this law. I don't think it should be for a government to tell someone to wear or to not to wear a piece of religious clothing.
On Friday, you said it's not discriminatory. If it's not discriminatory, why are you opposed to the bill?
I have been opposed to the bill because it's not for governments to do. I think we need to respect people's freedom of choice, freedom of expression, freedom of religion. The Quebec government passed this bill, and I am the only party leader who has said that I am not taking off the table the possibility of weighing in as it moves forward in the courts.
This bill says that a woman who wears a hijab can't become a judge. Are you saying that that's not a discriminatory bill? I'm
saying I disagree with that bill. But I, unlike both Jagmeet Singh and Erin O'Toole, I've said that I may well, as a federal government, have to intervene and stand up for people's fundamental rights. I'm the only party leader that has taken that strong position to defend fundamental rights before the courts. Right now it is before the courts. They are going to make a determination on whether or not it is impacting on people's fundamental rights or not.
In 2017, you would use that term when you were discussing this bill. Now you seem to be backtracking on that, or at least not using this term in my questions to you. So to those who are watching right now, who might have concerns that you're trying to appease your electorate, depending on where you're campaigning, Quebec, you'll say one thing, in other parts of the country, you'll say another. How do you respond to that?
That is absolutely not fair. Because on this issue, I have been consistent in Quebec and outside of Quebec, everywhere. I will not take off the table standing up for people's fundamental rights. And a lot of Quebecers take me to task for that, including Yves-François Blanchet of the Bloc and the Premier. But I will say that the federal government's job is always to be there to protect fundamental rights. And that's why I've taken a position that is stronger in opposition to this than any of the other federal parties, including Jagmeet Singh of the NDP, who should be there as well, one would think, for defending fundamental rights.
Okay, we'll move on now to feminism. You relied on support from women and minorities in order to get elected multiple times. Now those groups aren't having the same reaction to you, some even claiming that you're not truly a feminist, that's just part of your brand. Given all that's happened under your watch over the last 6 years, and you've said it weighs on you, can you really sit here right now, today, and still call yourself a feminist?
Absolutely, because I didn't just rely on support from women across the country to get elected. I relied on extraordinary women across the country to deliver big things for Canadians, whether it was with Jody Wilson-Raybould in those early years, delivering on medical assistance in dying and legalization of cannabis and all the other things.
In those early years, a lot has happened since that time.
And now I'm relying on the country's first woman finance minister to deliver historic childcare agreements across the country that are at stake in this election. I'm relying on an extraordinary health minister to have seen us through this pandemic.
As it should be. It is 2021. Mr. Trudeau, as you famously said 6 years ago, just because you rely on strong women in order to push forward your agenda and shared vision, of course, absolutely, for the country, does that still mean, given, again, everything that's happened under your watch, that you can call yourself a feminist? Have you reflected on whether you maybe should reconsider that?
A feminist is someone who believes that women and men should have the same opportunities and knows there's a lot more work to do to get there and is ready to fight for it. And I am ready to fight for it as much as I ever have been, even more so as we come out of this pandemic, where women have been hit harder than any other group just about. That's why we move forward on childcare. That's why we're standing up to make sure that assault weapons and gun control gets strengthened. Unlike both of those things that Erin O'Toole wants to move backwards on, because he doesn't understand that standing up for women's rights, standing up for women's economic opportunities is not just the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do for our economy, for our country.
I want to move on to the topic of Afghanistan and bring up one woman in particular. In 2018, Shakila Zareen fled to Canada from Afghanistan after she was shot in the face by her Taliban husband. Our Global News cameras were there when you met and you hugged her. She credits you, Mr. Trudeau, for saving her life. And now she is begging you to help her family and other families like hers who are in hiding in Afghanistan. What is your commitment to her and others in a similar position?
That we are going to bring 40,000 Afghans who are fighting for a better life, who are hoping for a better life, to Canada, because Canadians are opening their hearts to that. We were able to bring out about 3,700 people while the airport was open, while the Americans were still there. We have since been working with partners in the region, including the Qataris and the Pakistanis, to get people out and to Canada. We're going to continue to do that because Canadians know We have sacrifices. We have been there to fight for a better future Afghanistan, and we will continue to.
So will you commit to issuing travel documents and temporary resident permits to those who helped our military who are still in Afghanistan and their extended families before it's too late?
Yes, we are. We have been. We will continue to. There are challenges getting out of Afghanistan right now, but we are working with partners. We are working to do that. Canadians want us to do more. We want to do more. We are doing more. We're going to welcome 40,000 Afghans to Canada.
So important to look ahead, but I just want to go back a moment and talk about your immediate response to the crisis in Afghanistan. A BC-based veteran who served in Afghanistan told us, quite frankly, that your government has been, quote, inept in the immediate response to the crisis in Afghanistan, and that the veterans community had been, quote, screaming at your government to get people out of the country, and nothing was done until the last minute. He says that your response and your government's response will go down in history as a major failure. What do you say to that?
I fully understand how frustrated people who sacrificed, who fought alongside extraordinary Afghans who were there to help to build a better future can be frustrated by what the international community, including Canada, was unable to do to prevent the Taliban from taking over, or unable to get more people out of that airport during that evacuation. But we are not giving up. We are not letting down our efforts. Diplomats, active forces members, consular officials, we're all continuing to do the work necessary to get tens of thousands of Afghans out of Afghanistan to their new lives in Canada.
But Mr. Trudeau, again, just looking back for a moment, your own defense minister served 3 tours in Afghanistan. If there's going to be any government that's going to understand the crisis on the ground, clearly it is your government. And the veterans community is coming out strongly saying that this was a major failure. What responsibility do you take for that?
I accept that some people's perspective on that is we needed to go further and faster.
You don't agree with that perspective?
I think we had to go as fast as we possibly could and keep people safe, and that's exactly what we did. We got all Canadians out. We, if quicker, our diplomats out, while at the same time working with our partners to get even more people out. We didn't get as many people out as the UK or the Americans, but we compare favorably to other large countries that had strong presences there, because we showed the kind of engagement and commitment that Canadians expect of us.
All right, Mr. Trudeau, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much again for your time.
This is an election on big things that we didn't get to talk about. We didn't talk about the pandemic. We didn't talk about climate change. These are the decisions people are taking. This is what people care about in BC.
Mr. Trudeau, what people care about is, among many things, reconciliation. And that's why that was among the top questions that I've asked you today. We have run the debate. We have run major news conferences that you have held throughout the campaign. Our colleagues across the country have asked for opportunities to interview you and ask a range of topics, and you've denied their request. This is likely, from what we understand, the only opportunity.
I'm excited to continue talking to British Columbians about climate change and about ending this pandemic for good, and about the important choice BCers and all Canadians need to make on how we move forward.
Great. Thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you.